The meeting room fell silent as the hologram flickered to life. 12 pairs of eyes watched the blue projection show an alien warship cutting through a defense fleet like they were made of paper. The water-based weapons sliced through metal hulls, leaving behind only floating debris. "This happened 2 days ago at the Centauri outpost," said General Moore, his face grim. "No survivors." Captain Jack Reed stood by the window, looking out at the stars. He was a tall man with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much war. At 45, he was one of Earth's most experienced fleet commanders. "The Aquans," he said quietly. "They're coming here next, aren't they?" General Moore nodded. "Our scouts report their fleet has changed course. They'll reach our solar system in 3 weeks." A cold feeling spread through the room. Everyone knew what the Aquans were. The blue-skinned beings from a water world had spent the last 100 years taking over the galaxy. Their ships carried weapons that no one could stand against. "For those who haven't seen the reports," said Moore, pressing a button that changed the hologram, "these are hydro weapons." The image showed a close-up of an Aquan ship firing what looked like a stream of water. But this was no ordinary water. It moved with impossible speed and force, cutting through a battlecruiser's armor like it wasn't there. "The Aquans can control water at the molecule level," explained Moore. "They can make it harder than steel or sharp enough to cut through anything, and they have endless supplies of it." "What about our plasma cannons?" asked a younger officer. "Water boils against heat, right?" "We've tried that," said Moore, shaking his head. "They have some kind of shield that keeps the water from boiling away. 23 systems have fought against them. 23 have lost." Captain Jack turned from the window. "So we surrender? Is that the plan?" The room grew even quieter. No one wanted to say it out loud. "The President is considering all options," said Moore carefully. "But yes, surrender is being discussed. The Aquans allow planets to live if they agree to pay heavy taxes and follow their rules." Jack's fist hit the table. "We didn't fight the Arctarian Empire and the Nexus Horde just to bow down to some fish people." "Captain Reed," Moore warned. "Watch your language. This isn't a bar fight. We're talking about the survival of our species." An older man who had been sitting quietly in the corner stood up. He had white hair and moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp. "Perhaps not all options have been explored." Everyone turned to look at him. "Admiral Marcus," said Moore with respect, "the floor is yours." Marcus walked to the center of the room. He had been retired for 10 years, but his name still carried weight. He had led Earth's forces in the war against the Arctarians 20 years ago. "I've been studying the Aquans since they first appeared," he said. "Everyone focuses on their weapons, but no one asks the right questions." He took the control pad from Moore and changed the hologram to show an Aquan up close. The alien had blue skin, large black eyes, and webbed hands. "The Aquans come from a water world. They evolved in the oceans. Their bodies can't handle high heat. Their technology works with water, not against it." Jack's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying, Admiral?" "I'm saying that we've been fighting them wrong," said Marcus. "Everyone tries to block their water attacks, or dodge them. But what if we went straight through them instead?" "That's suicide," said one of the officers. "Not if we had a ship that could turn their greatest strength into their biggest weakness," said Marcus with a small smile. "Not if we had a ship that could make their water weapons useless." He pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the table. It projected plans for a ship unlike anything they had seen before. "I call it the Sunforge," he said. "A ship built around heat and fire instead of standard weapons. The Aquans use water because that's what they know. We need to use what we know." "And what's that?" asked Moore. "How to make things burn," said Marcus simply. 3 days later, Captain Jack stood in a massive hangar looking up at the beginnings of the Sunforge. Workers moved around the skeleton of the ship, welding pieces together and installing systems. "It's not going to be ready in time," said a woman's voice beside him. Jack turned to see Lieutenant Anna Chen, the lead engineer assigned to the project. She had oil stains on her hands and dark circles under her eyes. "Then we'll have to make it ready," said Jack. "The President gave us 2 weeks before she has to give the Aquans an answer." Anna shook her head. "You don't understand. This ship uses technology we've only tested in labs. The core reaches temperatures that would melt normal ships. The shielding might not even work. It has to work, said Jack firmly. Because surrender isn't an option. They walked closer to the ship. Even incomplete, it was impressive. Unlike the sleek designs of most Earth ships, the Sunforge was bulky, with thick armor plates and a glowing red core visible through special windows. The main idea is simple, Anna explained as they walked. We create heat so intense that it instantly vaporizes any water it touches. The problem is controlling that heat and protecting our own crew from it. A loud voice called from across the hangar. Captain, Lieutenant, you need to see this. They hurried over to where Commander Tom Parker was standing by a screen. Tom was the weapons officer assigned to the Sunforge, a stocky man with a permanent scowl. He had lost his family when the Aquans attacked a human colony the year before. New reports from the outer system, he said, pointing at the screen. The Aquans just destroyed our monitoring station on Pluto. They're moving faster than we thought. Jack's stomach tightened. How long? 10 days, maybe less. Anna's face went pale. We need at least 2 weeks just to finish the basic systems. The weapons won't be ready for 3. Then we focus on what matters most, said Jack. The heat shield and the core. If we can't fight back yet, we at least need to be able to survive their attacks. A new voice joined them. Actually, the shield is the weapon. They turned to see a thin man with wild gray hair and glasses. Dr. Wilson was the scientist who had developed the heat theory that made the Sunforge possible. If we can turn their water into steam fast enough, he continued, the expansion creates an explosive force. We don't need to shoot them if we can make their own weapons blow up in their faces. Jack looked back at the half-built ship. It seemed impossible that this unfinished vessel could stand against the might of the Aquan fleet. But it was all they had. Work shifts are now 24 hours, he announced. I want every available engineer, welder, and technician on this. If anyone needs a reason to work harder, remind them that their families are on this planet. As people rushed to their stations with new urgency, Jack looked at the small team that would form the core of his crew. Anna, with her brilliant mind, Tom with his fighting spirit, and Dr. Wilson with his unconventional ideas. Do you really think we can win? Anna asked quietly. Jack watched as the workers swarmed over the Sunforge like ants, racing against time. I think we're going to show those water breathers that they picked the wrong planet to mess with, he said. Humans don't surrender. We adapt. We overcome. And right now we're going to build a ship that burns hotter than they can imagine. Above them, through the open roof of the hangar, the stars shone coldly. Somewhere out there, the Aquan fleet was coming. But for the first time, since the news had broken, Jack felt something other than dread. He felt hope. The Sunforge grew day by day. Workers crawled over it like ants, welding and hammering around the clock. The once empty hangar now hummed with activity as machines whirred and sparks flew. Captain Jack walked through the chaos, stepping over cables and dodging moving equipment. 7 days had passed since the project began. 7 days out of the 10 they had left. Captain! Lieutenant Anna waved him over to a large computer display. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, but her face showed excitement. We've solved the core temperature problem. Jack looked at the screen. It showed a diagram of the ship's center where a glowing ball of energy pulsed. The old design could only reach 5,000 degrees, Anna explained. But Dr. Wilson found a way to double it. 10,000 degrees, Captain. Hot enough to turn water into vapor instantly. Will the ship survive that kind of heat? Jack asked. Anna pointed to a new layer around the core. That's where Tom's idea comes in. Tell him, Tom. Commander Tom Parker stepped forward. Unlike Anna's excitement, his face remained serious. Since losing his family to the Aquans, he rarely smiled. We're using a double-layer shield, he said. The inner layer keeps the heat in. The outer layer lets us control where the heat goes. He tapped a few buttons and the diagram showed heat flowing from the core to the front of the ship. We can direct it like a weapon. Jack nodded, impressed. How are we on time? Anna's smile faded. The main systems will be ready, but we're having trouble with the engines. They keep overheating when tested with the core. What do you need? More time, said Anna. Or a miracle. As if on cue, Admiral Marcus walked in, leaning on a cane. Despite his age, he visited the project daily, offering advice from his decades of experience. I might have something better than a miracle, he said. Follow me. He led them to a small lab off the main hangar. Inside, Dr. Wilson was hunched over a tank of water, dropping small metal balls into it. Each ball created a burst of steam when it hit the water. What are we looking at? Jack asked. The answer to our engine problem, said Marcus. Dr. Wilson, show them. Wilson looked up with a grin. His wild gray hair seemed to stand even more on end than usual. The Aquans think water is the perfect substance, he said. And they're right, it's stable, powerful, and common. But they never learned what water does when it meets extreme heat in a confined space. He took a larger metal sphere, heated it with a torch until it glowed red, then dropped it into a sealed container of water. The container shot across the room and slammed into the wall. Steam expansion, Wilson explained. When water turns to steam, it increases in volume by 1,700 times. That's energy we can use for propulsion. Tom's eyes widened. You're saying we can use their own water against them? Not just for defense, but for movement too? Wilson nodded. Their attacks will literally push us forward if we heat the water as it hits us. For the first time in days, Jack felt real hope. How soon can we install this system? 2 days, said Anna. Maybe less if we pull people from the weapons team. Do it, ordered Jack. Weapons won't matter if we can't move. The next evening, Jack stood on a platform overlooking the nearly complete Sunforge. The ship looked nothing like Earth's usual sleek vessels. It was bulky, with thick armor plating and a slightly rounded front that people had started calling the heat shield. Through special windows, he could see the core glowing red at the center of the ship. Workers were installing the final components of the engine system based on Wilson's steam discovery. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Marcus joined him at the railing. In my 40 years of service, I never saw anything built this quickly. Will it be enough? Jack asked quietly. Marcus looked at him. You're worried. In 8 days, we're taking an untested ship with experimental technology against an enemy that has never been defeated. Yes, I'm worried, Marcus nodded. As you should be. Only a fool wouldn't be scared. But remember, the Aquans have never faced humans before. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the hangar. Red lights flashed as a voice came over the speakers. All personnel, battle stations. Repeat, all personnel to battle stations. Jack's communicator buzzed. He answered it to hear General Moore's tense voice. Reed, get up to command now. The Aquans just broke through our outer defenses. They're at Mars already. Jack's blood ran cold. Mars? That's impossible. They shouldn't be there for another week. Tell that to the 2 outposts they just destroyed, said Moore. We need the Sunforge ready now. Jack looked at the ship. It was maybe 80% complete. The weapons were barely installed and the engines hadn't been fully tested. We need more time, he said. There is no more time, Moore replied. Launch in 3 hours, or there won't be an Earth to defend. The line went dead. Jack turned to Marcus, whose face had gone pale. 3 hours, Jack said. Can we do it? Marcus stared at the ship for a long moment, then straightened his back. We don't have a choice. 2.5 hours later, Jack stood on the bridge of the Sunforge. Around him, a skeleton crew rushed to prepare for launch. Screens flickered to life, showing systems coming online. Lieutenant Anna worked frantically at the engineering station. Core temperature rising, she reported. 5,000 degrees, 6,000, holding at 6,500. That's all I can give you safely right now. At the weapons console, Tom ran diagnostics on systems that had been installed only hours before. Heat channels are responding, but I can't guarantee accuracy. We're basically pointing a flamethrower and hoping for the best. Dr. Wilson monitored the steam conversion system. The capture tanks are ready. Any water that hits us will be routed to the engines, in theory at least. Jack sat in the captain's chair, feeling its unfamiliar shape. The ship was incomplete, untested, and possibly dangerous to its own crew. But it was humanity's only hope. "All stations, final report," he ordered. "Engineering ready, Captain," said Anna. "Core stable but below optimal temperature." "Weapons online but untested," reported Tom. "Life support functioning," added another crew member. "Navigation systems calibrated," said the pilot, a young man named Ryan who had volunteered despite the risks. Jack took a deep breath. Outside the ship, the hangar doors were slowly opening, revealing the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Aquan fleet was approaching, their hydro weapons ready to tear through Earth's defenses like they had done to countless worlds before. "This ship was supposed to take 3 more weeks," Jack said to his crew. "We built it in 10 days. Whatever happens next, know that you've already done the impossible." He pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, prepare for launch, secure all stations." The Sunforge's engines hummed to life, creating a vibration that ran through the entire vessel. "Navigation, set course for Mars orbit. Maximum speed." Jack gripped the arms of his chair as the ship lifted off the ground. "Let's show these Aquans what happens when they pick a fight with humans." The Sunforge rose into the night sky, its red core glowing like an angry star. Behind it, the people of Earth watched and hoped. Ahead, the Aquan fleet waited with weapons that had conquered half the galaxy. The battle for humanity was about to begin. The Sunforge moved through space, its engines glowing red against the darkness. Inside the ship, the crew worked in tense silence. No one had slept in over 24 hours, and the fear of what waited ahead kept them alert despite their exhaustion. Captain Jack stood behind the pilot, watching as they approached Mars. The red planet looked peaceful from this distance, but the radar screen told a different story. 5 large dots moved in orbit around Mars. Aquan warships. "Status report," Jack ordered. "Core temperature holding at 7,000 degrees, reported Anna from the engineering station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, making small adjustments. "I think I can push it to 8,000 when we need it." Tom looked up from the weapons console. "Heat channels are aligned, ready to direct core energy to the front shield on your command." "What about the Aquan ships?" Jack asked. 4 destroyer class vessels and 1 larger ship," replied the sensor officer. "The large one is staying back. The others are moving to intercept us." Jack nodded. This was it. Humanity's first real encounter with the Aquans. No human had ever seen an Aquan ship, up close and lived to tell about it. "All hands battle stations," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his stomach. "Prepare for contact in 5 minutes." As the crew rushed to their positions, Admiral Marcus joined Jack on the bridge. The old man looked calm, but his hands gripped his cane tightly. "Remember," Marcus said quietly, "they'll expect us to run or try to dodge their attacks. They won't expect us to go straight at them." "Because it's suicide," Jack replied. Marcus smiled slightly. "Only if we're wrong about the heat shield." The ship's communicator suddenly crackled to life. A strange, gurgling voice came through, speaking in halting English. "Earth vessel. This is Commander Vrax of the Aquan expansion fleet. Surrender now, and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Jack looked at Marcus, who nodded. They had agreed not to respond to any communication. Let the Aquans think they were facing a normal Earth ship. 30 seconds to contact," announced the pilot. "First Aquan destroyer is charging weapons." On the main screen, they could see the enemy ship clearly now. It was sleek and blue with what looked like giant tanks of water visible along its sides. A circular weapon on its front began to glow. "They're preparing to fire their hydro cannon," said Tom, his voice tight with anger. He had been waiting for this moment since his family died. "All power to forward shield," ordered Jack. "Anna, give me everything you can from the core." "Core temperature rising to 8,000 degrees, Anna called out, her fingers flying over the controls. "Heat shield activating." The front of the Sunforge began to glow red, then orange, then almost white with heat. 5 seconds to impact," said the pilot. Jack gripped the back of the pilot's chair. "Hold course. Take us straight into their weapon fire." Some of the newer crew members looked at him. With wide eyes, but no one questioned the order. They had all volunteered knowing this might be a one-way mission. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The Aquan ship fired. A massive stream of pressurized water shot toward the Sunforge, moving at incredible speed. On any other ship, that water would cut through the hull like a knife through paper. But as the water hit the glowing heat shield of the Sunforge, something amazing happened. In an instant, the water turned to steam with an explosive force. A cloud of white vapor surrounded the front of the ship, temporarily blinding everyone. "Did it work?" Jack shouted over the rumbling of the ship. Anna checked her readings. "Shield holding. Water is vaporizing on contact." "The Aquan ship is confused," reported the sensor officer. "They're adjusting their weapons." Through the clearing steam, they could see the Aquan destroyer repositioning. It seemed to be preparing for another attack. "They're going to try again," said Tom. "But now we know it works." Jack turned to him. "Can we use this somehow? Turn their attack against them?" Tom thought for a moment, then his eyes widened. "The steam explosion, if we could direct it back at them, like a reflected punch," said Jack. He turned to Anna. "Can we channel the heat to create a directional steam burst when their water hits us?" Anna's fingers were already moving across her console. "Maybe, if I divert power from the rear shields to the front heat modulators." "Do it," ordered Jack. "Tom, be ready to use that steam burst as a weapon." The Aquan ship fired again, another powerful stream of water rushing toward them. "Brace for impact," Jack called out. This time, when the water hit the heat shield, Anna was ready. She channeled the heat in a specific pattern, creating a controlled explosion of steam that shot back toward the Aquan ship. The enemy vessel hadn't expected this. The superheated steam hit its hull, causing parts of it to crack and warp from the sudden temperature change. "It worked," shouted Tom. "Their hull is damaged." The bridge crew cheered, but Jack knew they weren't done yet. "Press the advantage. Move us closer." The Sunforge surged forward, its heat shield glowing even brighter now. The damaged Aquan ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. The human vessel was upon it, the intense heat from its shield causing the water tanks on the Aquan ship to boil and expand. "Their tanks are rupturing," reported the sensor officer with amazement. "They're being destroyed by their own water." Jack watched as the Aquan destroyer began to break apart. No one had ever seen an Aquan ship destroyed before. It seemed almost unreal, but their victory was short-lived. Alarms began to sound throughout the bridge. "3 more destroyers approaching," called out the sensor officer. "They're surrounding us." Jack looked at the tactical display. The Sunforge had defeated 1 ship, but 3 more were closing in, and the large command ship was moving forward now too. "Can we do the same thing again?" he asked Anna. She shook her head, looking worried. "The shield is overheating. We need time to cool it down, or we risk melting our own ship. And our weapon systems are still mostly untested," added Tom. "We got lucky with that steam reflection, but we need more than luck against 3 ships." Jack considered their options. They could retreat, but that would only delay the inevitable. The Aquans would still reach Earth. They could keep fighting, but with damaged systems they might not survive. Then Dr. Wilson's voice came over the comm from the engine room. "Captain, I have an idea. The water we vaporized from that first ship, we captured some of it in our engine tanks." "How does that help us?" Jack asked. "If we superheat it and release it all at once, we could create a massive steam cloud," Wilson explained. "It might blind their sensors long enough for us to escape or reposition." It was risky, but they had no better options. "Do it," Jack ordered. The ship shuddered as superheated steam burst from vents all around the hull, creating a massive white cloud that engulfed the Sunforge and expanded outward toward the approaching Aquan ships. "Full power to engines," Jack commanded. "Get us out of here while they can't see us." The Sunforge shot forward, pushing through the steam cloud and away from the confused Aquan vessels. As they cleared the cloud, Jack saw Mars in the distance and made a quick decision. "Set course for the far side of Mars. We'll use the planet for cover while we make repairs." As the ship raced towards safety, the crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. They had done what no one thought possible. They had faced the dreaded hydro weapons and survived. More than that, they had destroyed an Aquan ship. For the first time since the Aquans began their conquest of the galaxy, someone had fought back successfully. "Send a message to Earth," Jack told the communications officer. "Tell them the Sunforge works. Tell them we can fight the Aquans." As the message was sent, Jack looked around at his exhausted but triumphant crew. This was just the beginning of the battle. But they had proven something important today. The Aquans weren't invincible after all. News of the Sunforge's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For decades, species had lived in fear of the Aquans and their unstoppable hydro weapons. Now, for the first time, someone had fought back and won. The Sunforge rested in a makeshift dock on Phobos, one of Mars's small moons. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damage from the battle and improve systems that had been rushed during the initial construction. Inside the ship, Captain Jack met with his senior officers in the small conference room. A holographic map showed the positions of Earth forces and the Aquan fleet, which had pulled back to regroup after their unexpected defeat. "Earth Command is building more heat shields for our regular ships," Jack explained. "But it will take time. Until then, we're the only defense against the Aquans." "The good news is we've made some improvements," said Anna. She looked tired but excited. "The core can now reach 9,000 degrees consistently, and we've redesigned the heat channels based on what we learned in the battle." Tom nodded. "And I've been working on something new." He pressed a button and the hologram changed to show a new weapon design. "I call it a thermal lance. It's a focused beam of heat that can reach out and hit enemy ships from a distance." "You mean we don't have to wait for them to shoot water at us?" asked Jack. "Exactly," said Tom. "We can attack first now." Dr. Wilson entered the room carrying a small container filled with liquid. "And I've made another discovery," he said, placing the container on the table. "This is a sample I took from the destroyed Aquan ship." "Water?" asked Jack, looking at the blue-tinted liquid. "Not just any water," Wilson replied. "It's their biological fluid. Aquans don't just use water as a weapon. Their bodies are full of specialized water cells." He pointed to a screen showing microscopic images. "These cells are extremely sensitive to temperature changes. When heated rapidly, they rupture." The implications were clear. "You're saying their entire biology has a weakness to what we're doing?" Wilson nodded. "Their evolution in oceans made them masters of water manipulation, but they never developed resistance to extreme heat. They've never needed to, until now." The ship's communicator beeped. "Captain," called the communications officer over the speaker. "We're receiving a transmission from an unknown ship approaching Phobos." Jack frowned. "Aquan?" "No, sir. It's identifying itself as a Saurian vessel." The officers exchanged surprised looks. The Saurians were a reptilian species known for their tactical skills. They had been one of the first to fall to the Aquans years ago. "Put it through," ordered Jack. A new hologram appeared showing a tall, green-scaled being with yellow eyes. "I am Captain Gregg of the Saurian Resistance," the alien said in a raspy voice. "We've come to meet the humans who destroyed an Aquan ship." Jack stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jack Reed of Earth's Defense Fleet." Gregg's lizard-like face showed what might have been a smile. "News of your victory has reached every corner of the galaxy, Captain Reed. Many thought it was just a rumor. The Aquans have been undefeated for so long. What do you want, Captain Gregg?" "To offer an alliance," replied the Saurian. "My ship is small, but I have information about Aquan fleet movements and weaknesses. For years we've been gathering intelligence, waiting for someone who could actually fight them." Jack considered this. They needed all the help they could get. "Permission to dock granted, Captain Gregg. We'll meet in person." An hour later, Jack stood with Gregg on the observation deck, looking out at Mars. The Saurian was even taller up close, with scales that shimmered in the dim light. "The Aquans are scared," Gregg said. "That's new for them. Their flagship, the Abyssal Tide, has been called to lead the next attack." "Is that bad?" asked Jack. Gregg turned his yellow eyes to the human. "The Abyssal Tide has never been defeated. It carries enough water to flood entire continents, and its commander, High Admiral Zet, is the most experienced warrior in their fleet. Jack frowned. When will they attack? Soon, said Greg. They're gathering their forces now, but first, they want to understand how you defeated their ship. He handed Jack a small data device. These are the current positions of all Aquan vessels near your solar system. Use it well. Why are you helping us? Jack asked. Greg looked back at Mars. My homeworld was one of the first to fall to the Aquans. Our cities were flooded, our people enslaved. For years, we've fought a losing battle. But now... He turned to Jack, his eyes intense. Now there's hope, and hope is worth fighting for. The next day, alarms blared throughout the Sunforge. Jack rushed to the bridge to find his crew already at their stations. Multiple Aquan ships approaching, reported the sensor officer. 5 destroyers and something much bigger. The main screen showed a massive ship moving toward Mars. Unlike the smaller destroyers, this vessel was enormous, with giant tanks of water visible along its length. It seemed to pulse with blue energy. The Abyssal Tide, whispered Anna. They're transmitting a message, said the communications officer. The screen changed to show an Aquan commander. Unlike the others they had seen, this one wore elaborate decorations on its blue skin and had piercing black eyes. I am High Admiral Zet, the Aquan gurgled in English. Your primitive vessel claimed one of our ships through trickery. There will be no more victories for Earth. Surrender now, or we will demonstrate the true power of the hydro weapons. Jack stepped forward. This is Captain Jack Reed. We will not surrender. Zet's large eyes blinked slowly. Then you will drown, human, just like all who oppose us. The transmission ended. Jack turned to his crew. Battle stations. Tom, are the thermal lances ready? Ready, Captain, Tom replied, his fingers already moving over the weapon controls. Anna, how's the core? At full power, 9,000 degrees and stable. Jack nodded. Then let's show them what humans can do. He turned to the pilot. Take us out. Set course directly for the Abyssal Tide. The Sunforge moved out from behind Phobos, its engines glowing brightly. As they approached the Aquan fleet, Jack could see the smaller ships moving to surround them. They're changing tactics, observed Greg, who had joined them on the bridge. They won't all attack at once like before. Then, we'll pick them off one by one, said Jack. Tom, target the nearest destroyer with the thermal lance. Tom aimed the new weapon and fired. A beam of intense heat shot from the Sunforge, striking the Aquan vessel. Where it hit, the ship's hull began to glow and warp. Direct hit, Tom called. Out. But the Aquan ship wasn't destroyed. It moved away, its damaged section cooling as it retreated. They're adapting, said Greg. They've added some kind of cooling system to their hulls. Then we need to hit them harder, Jack decided. Anna, can we increase the lance temperature? Not without risking our own systems, she replied. But, she paused, thinking, what if we combine the lance with their water? If we can heat their tanks directly, the expansion would tear them apart from the inside, finished Wilson. Do it, ordered Jack. The battle grew more intense as the Sunforge engaged the Aquan destroyers. Using the thermal lances to target their water tanks, they managed to cripple 2 more enemy ships. But then the Abyssal Tide moved forward. Its massive front cannon began to glow. Energy readings off the chart, reported the sensor officer. They're charging their main hydro cannon. All power to the heat shield, Jack commanded. The ship shuddered as the Abyssal Tide fired. A massive torrent of water, larger than anything they had faced before, rushed toward the Sunforge. When it hit the shield, the water vaporized as expected, but the sheer volume overwhelmed the ship's systems. Warning alarms sounded as the temperature inside the ship began to rise dangerously. Shield overloading, Anna called out. We can't take another hit like that. The Sunforge retreated, steam billowing around it. The Aquan fleet followed, sensing victory. But Jack wasn't ready to give up. What if we use Dr. Wilson's discovery? Target their biological weakness? Wilson nodded excitedly. If we can create a heat wave that affects their crew directly. Can we do that? Jack asked Anna. She thought for a moment. Maybe. If we vent the core heat in a specific pattern, creating a thermal pulse, like a heat bomb, said Tom, understanding. How long to set it up? Asked Jack. 10 minutes, Anna replied. But we'll only get one shot. After that, the core will need to cool down. Jack looked at the approaching Aquan fleet. Then let's make it count. As Anna and her team worked frantically to modify the ship's systems, the Sunforge played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the Aquan vessels, dodging their attacks while staying just close enough to keep their attention. Ready, Anna finally announced. Thermal pulse prepared. Jack took a deep breath. This would be their biggest gamble yet. Take us in close to the Abyssal Tide. All crew, prepare for extreme heat conditions. The Sunforge charged toward the massive enemy flagship, dodging water attacks from the surrounding destroyers. Now, Jack ordered when they were in position. Anna activated the thermal pulse. The Sunforge's core flared brightly, and a wave of intense heat expanded outward in all directions. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but sensors showed the temperature wave rushing toward the Aquan ships. When it hit, the effect was immediate. The Aquan vessels began to drift erratically, their movements uncoordinated. It's working, exclaimed Wilson. Their crews are being affected by the heat. The Abyssal Tide fired its weapons wildly, missing the Sunforge completely. Two of the destroyers collided, unable to maneuver properly. They're retreating, reported the sensor officer as the remaining Aquan ships began to pull away. Even the mighty Abyssal Tide was turning around, moving back from Mars toward deeper space. For the first time in known history, an Aquan fleet had retreated from battle. The bridge crew erupted in cheers. Jack allowed himself a small smile as he watched the enemy ships flee. It wasn't a complete victory. The Aquans would return, probably with new defenses against heat. But today, humanity had proven something important. The water dwellers had finally met their match. 2 weeks had passed since the Sunforge drove away the Abyssal Tide. Earth had used this time wisely. 5 more ships had been fitted with smaller versions of the heat technology, though none were as powerful as the original Sunforge. Captain, Jack stood in the command center on Earth, looking at the large screen that showed the positions of all known Aquan vessels. Their numbers had grown alarmingly. They're gathering their entire armada, said General Moore, his face grim. 5 hydro-dreadnoughts, including the Abyssal Tide, plus at least 30 destroyers. Have any other species joined our side? Jack asked. Moore shook his head. Captain Greg Saurians are helping, but most are still too afraid of the Aquans. They're watching to see what happens here. Admiral Marcus, now using a hover chair due to his weakening health, moved forward. They think we just got lucky, that our victory was a fluke. Then we'll have to prove them wrong, said Jack firmly. The door opened and Anna, Tom, and Dr. Wilson entered. They had been working non-stop on improving the Sunforge for the coming battle. We have something to show you, Captain, said Anna, her eyes bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. Dr. Wilson placed a small device on the table. It projected a diagram of what looked like a new weapon system. We call it the thermal cascade, Wilson explained. It combines everything we've learned about fighting the Aquans. Tom pointed to different parts of the diagram. It uses the core, heat to create a wave of energy that expands outward, like the pulse we used before, but much stronger. It affects both their ships and their biology. Will it work against their entire fleet? Jack asked. In theory, yes, said Wilson. But there's a catch. We need to get close to the center of their formation, and... He hesitated. We can only fire at once. The energy required will likely damage the Sunforge itself. Jack looked at the diagram, then at his team. These people had accomplished the impossible already, building a ship that could fight the unbeatable Aquans. If they believed this plan could work, he trusted them. How soon can it be installed? He asked. It's already done, Anna replied. The Sunforge is ready whenever you are. Jack nodded. Then it's time to end this. Space around Earth filled with ships. The 6 human vessels, led by the Sunforge, formed a defensive line. Behind them, Earth waited, its people watching the skies, with fear and hope. On the bridge of the Sunforge, Jack addressed his crew. Today we face the full might of the Aquan Armada. They've conquered half the galaxy with their hydro weapons. They think water is the most powerful force in the universe. He looked around at each person. Let's show them they're wrong. The sensor officer suddenly called out, "Captain, multiple ships dropping out of light speed. The Aquan fleet is here." On the main screen, ship after ship appeared. The 5 massive hydro dreadnoughts dwarfed the destroyers around them. At the center was the Abyssal Tide, now showing dark scorch, marks where the Sunforge had damaged it in their last encounter. "They've positioned themselves in attack formation," reported Tom from the weapons station. "The dreadnoughts are at the points of a star pattern, with the Abyssal Tide at the center." Jack studied the formation. To reach the center where they needed to be to activate the thermal cascade, they would have to push through the entire fleet. "Communication coming in from the Abyssal Tide," said the comm officer. High Admiral Zet appeared on screen. The Aquans, blue face showed dark patches, signs of burns from their last battle. "Humans," Zet gurgled. "Your defiance ends today. Your heat tricks worked once, but we have adapted. Surrender your planet now, and some of your people may live as our servants." Jack stepped forward. "We will never surrender, Admiral. Water is not the strongest force in the universe. The will to be free is stronger." Zet's large eyes narrowed. "Then we will drown your world and your freedom with it." The transmission cut off. "All ships, battle positions," ordered Jack. "Earth defense vessels 2 and 3 take the left flank. 4 and 5 the right. Saurian vessels provide cover fire. The Sunforge will lead the charge directly at the center." As the ships moved into position, Anna spoke from the engineering station. "Core temperature at maximum capacity. Thermal cascade system ready on your command." "Remember," added Wilson, "we need to be at the center of their formation for maximum effect." The 2 fleets faced each other in the blackness of space. For a moment, everything was still. Then the Aquan ships began to move. "They're charging weapons," reported Tom. "All dreadnoughts are powering up their main hydro cannons." Jack took a deep breath. "All ships advance." The human fleet surged forward just as the Aquans fired. Massive streams of pressurized water shot toward them from multiple directions. The heat shields on the human ships activated, vaporizing the water attacks. Steam clouds bloomed across space like white flowers. The battle quickly became chaotic. The smaller human ships darted between the Aquan vessels, their heat weapons causing damage but not enough to stop the massive alien fleet. The Sunforge pushed forward, its powerful engines driving it toward the center where the Abyssal Tide waited. 2 destroyers moved to block its path. "Thermal lances, fire!" Jack ordered. Tom targeted the destroyer's water tanks. The heat beams struck true, causing explosive bursts of steam that damaged the enemy ships. The Sunforge pushed through the gap, still heading for the center. "We're taking heavy fire," called out the damage control officer. "Rear shields failing." The ship shuddered as water attacks hit it from multiple directions. Some vaporized against the heat shields, but others found weak points, causing damage throughout the vessel. "Engineering to bridge." Anna's voice came over the comm, sounding stressed. "The core containment is starting to crack. We can't take much more of this." Jack looked at the tactical display. They were still too far from the center to activate the thermal cascade effectively. "We need to get closer," he shouted over the noise of damage alarms. Suddenly, Greg's Saurian ship appeared alongside them, taking hits meant for the Sunforge. "Captain Reed," Greg's voice came through the comm. "We'll clear a path. My ship won't survive much longer anyway. Make it count." Before Jack could respond, the Saurian vessel surged forward, ramming into an Aquan destroyer that blocked their path. Both ships spun away, severely damaged. "Full power to engines," Jack ordered. "Head straight for the Abyssal Tide." The Sunforge raced forward through the opening created by Greg's sacrifice. All around them, the battle raged. The human ships were fighting bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. 2 of Earth's vessels had already gone dark. Finally, the Sunforge reached the heart of the Aquan formation. The massive bulk of the Abyssal Tide loomed before them. "We're in position," Tom shouted. "Thermal cascade ready," Anna reported. "But the core is critically unstable. Once we activate it, we'll have minutes at most before it breaches." Jack nodded grimly. They all knew this might be a one-way mission. "Activate the cascade." Anna's fingers flew over the controls, initiating the sequence they had designed. The ship's core glowed brighter than ever before, pulsing with energy that flowed into the new system. "Thermal cascade charging," she reported. 80%, 90. "Ready, fire," ordered Jack. The Sunforge released the built-up energy in a massive wave that expanded outward in all directions. Unlike their previous heat pulse, this one was visible, a rippling distortion that spread through space like a stone dropped in a pond. When it hit the Aquan ships, the effect was immediate and devastating. Water tanks ruptured, releasing their contents, which instantly vaporized in the intense heat. The expanding steam created secondary explosions throughout the fleet. On the biological level, the Aquans themselves were affected even more severely. The sudden, extreme temperature change caused their specialized water cells to burst, incapacitating entire crews simultaneously. The Abyssal Tide, closest to the pulse origin, suffered the worst damage. Its massive hull cracked in multiple places as its water weapon systems catastrophically failed. "It's working," shouted Tom, watching the sensor readings. But the victory came at a price. The Sunforge's core was now dangerously unstable, the heat threatening to melt the ship from the inside out. "Core breach in 2 minutes," Anna called over the blaring alarms. "We need to evacuate." "All hands to escape pods," Jack ordered. "Abandon ship. Repeat, abandon ship." As the crew rushed to the escape pods, Jack remained on the bridge, watching the Aquan fleet falling into disarray. Ship after ship went dark or began drifting helplessly. The mighty Abyssal Tide, pride of the Aquan Armada, was breaking apart. Anna appeared at his side. "Captain, we need to go. Now." Jack nodded and followed her to the last escape pod. As they pulled away from the Sunforge, they watched through the small window as the ship that had saved humanity glowed brighter and brighter. Then, in a final burst of light, the Sunforge's core breached. But instead of a destructive explosion, the ship released its remaining energy in one last thermal wave that washed over the crippled Aquan fleet. In the command center on Earth, General Moore watched as sensors showed the Aquan ships powering down or drifting away. The few that could still move were retreating, leaving their damaged vessels behind. "They're running," he said in disbelief. "They're actually running." 3 months later, Captain Jack stood on a platform before a cheering crowd. Behind him stood Anna, Tom, Dr. Wilson, and the surviving crew of the Sunforge. Even Greg was there, his scaled face showing what passed for a smile among Saurians. The President of Earth stepped forward to place medals on each of their chests, for bravery beyond the call of duty, and for saving not just Earth, but countless worlds from Aquan domination. As the ceremony ended, Jack looked up at the monument being unveiled, a statue of the Sunforge, the ship that had turned the tide of the war. News had come in from across the galaxy. With the Aquan fleet defeated, subjugated species were rising up, throwing off their oppressors. The water dwellers were retreating to their home system, their invasion halted. A new alliance was forming, with Earth playing a leading role. Human thermal technology was being shared with former Aquan subjects, creating a more balanced and free galaxy. The Sunforge itself was gone, sacrificed to win the war, but its legacy lived on. Throughout the stars, it had become known by a name that made Jack smile every time he heard it. The dangerous ship, the vessel that proved heat could overcome water, and that humans would never back down from a fight, no matter how impossible the odds.